The kitchen smelled like burnt coffee when I told my parents I was dropping out of law school. Dad's fork clattered against his plate, and Mom's face went pale. I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, but nothing prepared me for the silence that followed my announcement. I was 23, 3 months into my second year at Columbia, and I'd finally admitted what I'd known since freshman orientation. Law wasn't my passion. Photography was. I wanted to tell stories through images, capture moments that mattered, make people feel something real. But to my parents, photography wasn't a career. It was a hobby, a distraction, something kids did before growing up and getting serious about life. Dad stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the tile floor. "You're throwing away your future," he said, his voice low and controlled. Mom just stared at her hands. I tried explaining about the internship offer from a documentary photographer in Brooklyn, about the portfolio I'd been building, about how miserable I was studying contracts and torts. But they weren't listening. They'd already made up their minds. I was making the biggest mistake of my life, and they wouldn't support it. Dad gave me 48 hours to change my mind. 2 days to choose between my dream and my family. I spent those hours walking through Central Park, camera around my neck, photographing strangers and street performers. Every shot reminded me why I loved this work. The way light caught a dancer's hair. The lines on an old woman's face telling decades of stories. The joy in a child's eyes chasing pigeons. This was what made me feel alive, not case studies and legal briefs. When I returned home on the third day, my suitcases were packed and waiting by the door. Mom couldn't look at me. Dad handed me an envelope with $2,000 inside. "This is all you're getting from us," he said. "If you walk out that door, you're on your own. No more tuition. No more health insurance. No more family support." I looked at my childhood home, at the photos of me on the walls, graduation pictures, and baseball trophies. "I'm sorry you can't understand," I said quietly. Dad's jaw tightened. "We understand perfectly. You're being selfish and irresponsible. Don't come back until you're ready to be an adult." I picked up my bags and left. Brooklyn in November was colder than I remembered. I found a room in a shared apartment in Bushwick, splitting rent with 3 roommates I'd found on Craigslist. The space was tiny, barely enough for a bed and my equipment, but it was mine. I took a job washing dishes at a diner in Williamsburg, working nights so I could shoot during the day. The work was exhausting, my hands constantly raw from hot water and soap, but I needed the money. The internship with the documentary photographer, a woman named Patricia Huang, was unpaid. She was tough, demanding, never satisfied with my first attempts. But she taught me to see differently, to wait for the perfect moment, to understand that great photography was about patience and perspective. Between shifts at the diner, I photographed everything. Street corners and subway platforms, protests and parades, ordinary people living extraordinary lives. One afternoon, I stopped to help an elderly street vendor whose cart had tipped over, spilling flowers across the sidewalk. As I helped him gather the roses and carnations, I noticed his weathered hands, the way he handled each stem with care despite the chaos. I asked if I could photograph him. He nodded, and I captured something beautiful that day. 3 months into my new life, I found a letter slipped under my apartment door. Plain white envelope, my name written in elegant script. Inside was a single card with an address in Manhattan and a time, Tuesday, 2 p.m. No explanation, no signature. Just, "Your work has been noticed. Come alone." I almost threw it away, thinking it was spam or a prank. But something about the handwriting intrigued me. Tuesday came and curiosity won. The address led to a gallery in Chelsea, the kind of place with white walls and track lighting, where people spoke in whispers about composition and technique. I felt underdressed in my thrift store jacket and worn jeans. A woman approached me, maybe 40, impeccably dressed. "You came," she said, smiling. "I wasn't sure you would." I recognized her immediately. Victoria Kane. We'd competed for the same scholarship in undergraduate, both of us desperate for funding, both talented enough to deserve it. She'd won. I'd spent years resenting her for it, watching her career take off while I struggled through law school trying to please my parents. Now she stood before me, successful and confident, offering her hand like we were old friends instead of former rivals. Victoria led me through the gallery to a private office in the back. Photos covered the walls, her work mixed with images from other photographers. Some I recognized from magazines and exhibitions. "I've been following your Instagram," she said, pouring 2 glasses of water. "Your street photography is remarkable. Raw and honest. You have something most photographers spend years trying to develop." I didn't know what to say. Victoria Kane, the person I'd envied for 5 years, was complimenting my work. "I have a proposition," she continued, sliding a business card across the desk. "I'm curating a group exhibition on urban life. I want to include 10 of your photographs. Plus, I know someone looking for a photographer to document a community development project in the Bronx. It pays. Actual money, not exposure." I stared at the card, my mind racing. This felt too easy, too convenient. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She smiled. "Because someone helped me once when I needed it. And because your photographs of that flower vendor went viral last week. 4 million views. People are talking about you, and I want to represent talent before someone else does." Working with Victoria felt surreal. She introduced me to gallery owners and magazine editors, people who could actually advance my career. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that this was too good to be true. Why would someone who'd been my competitor suddenly become my mentor? Late one night, scrolling through old emails, I found the rejection letter from the scholarship committee. Victoria had been on that committee. She'd voted against me. I confronted her the next morning at her gallery. "You kept me from getting that scholarship," I said, anger rising in my chest. "You knew I needed it, and you voted no." She didn't deny it. "You're right. I did. And I've regretted it every day since." She explained that back then, she'd been desperate too, scared that any competition would hurt her chances. But watching my career from afar, seeing me quit law school to pursue photography despite losing everything, had changed her perspective. "I want to make it right," she said quietly. "But there's something else. I need your help with my own project. Something ambitious. Something that requires someone with your eye for authenticity." The project Victoria described was massive, a year-long documentary about immigrant communities in New York, their stories told through portraits and interviews. She'd secured funding from a major foundation, but the timeline was brutal and the expectations sky-high. I threw myself into the work, spending 16-hour days in neighborhoods across the city, building trust with families, capturing their struggles and triumphs. But 2 months in, everything fell apart. The foundation pulled half our funding after a scandal involving their director. We'd already committed to families, made promises about how their stories would be shared. Now we couldn't deliver. I felt like a failure, like I'd let everyone down. I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by hundreds of photographs that might never be seen, wondering if my parents had been right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I should have stayed in law school, taken the safe path, avoided all this pain. My phone rang. "Victoria. Meet me at the gallery," she said. "Don't give up yet." When I arrived, she was standing in front of a blank wall, arms crossed, thinking. "We do it ourselves," she said. "Forget the foundation. We find another way." We spent the next 3 months working harder than I'd ever worked. Victoria used her connections to organize a fundraising exhibition, selling her own photographs to finance our project. I shot during the day and printed at night, surviving on coffee and stubbornness. Gallery owners who'd ignored me before started returning my calls. A local newspaper ran a feature about the project, and suddenly people cared. Donations trickled in, enough to keep us going. The families we'd photographed rallied behind us, sharing our crowdfunding campaign, bringing their communities together. Slowly, impossibly, the project came back to life. We scheduled an exhibition for September, booked a respected gallery in Manhattan, sent invitations to critics and collectors. For the first time since leaving law school, I felt like I was building something real, something that mattered. Then my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months. "Mom, your father's in the hospital," she said, her voice tight. "Heart attack. We're going to lose the house. The medical bills." She trailed off. "We need help." I stood outside Mount Sinai Hospital, hands shaking, unable to go inside. My parents had disowned me, told me not to come back, made it clear I was dead to them. Now they needed me. Needed my money. Mom met me in the lobby, looking older than I remembered. Dark circles under her eyes, hair grayer, shoulders slumped with worry. "Your father's stable," she said. "But the bills, we don't have insurance anymore. He lost his job 6 months ago. We've been living on savings." She explained everything. The mortgage payments they'd missed. The credit card debt. The medical expenses piling up. They needed $50,000 just to stay afloat. I had $12,000 in my bank account, money I'd saved from the Bronx Project and the upcoming exhibition. Money I needed to live on, to keep working, to survive. "I'm sorry about what happened," Mom said quietly. "Your father was wrong. We both were. But please, we're your parents. We need you." I looked at her tired face and felt anger rise in my chest. Where was this apology when they kicked me out? Where was this understanding when I was washing dishes and sleeping on a mattress on the floor? I told Mom I needed time to think. I walked for hours through Central Park, past the places where I decided to choose photography over law school, over family approval. Victoria called while I was sitting by the fountain. I told her everything. "Don't give them the money," she said immediately. "You'll regret it. They didn't support your dream. They don't deserve your sacrifice now." But something felt wrong about that logic. Yes, they'd hurt me. Yes, they'd been wrong. But they were still my parents, still the people who'd raised me, fed me, loved me before I disappointed them. That night, I made a decision I knew Victoria wouldn't like. I told Mom I couldn't help. Not because I didn't want to, but because they'd made their choice when they disowned me. Now they had to live with the consequences, just like I had lived with mine. It was the hardest phone call I'd ever made. Mom cried. She begged. She said things she'd regret later. But I held firm. I had to. Victoria was offering me a partnership in her gallery, a chance to represent other emerging photographers, to build something lasting. It required investment, commitment, everything I had. If I gave my money to my parents, that opportunity would disappear. The partnership with Victoria transformed my career overnight. We opened a small gallery space in Brooklyn, focusing on documentary and street photography, giving space to artists who'd been overlooked by the mainstream art world. My exhibition in September sold out. 12 of my photographs went to private collectors, and a museum in Chicago bought 3 prints for their permanent collection. Suddenly, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. Magazine assignments came regularly. I taught workshops on weekends. The flower vendor I'd photographed months ago became the face of a New York Times feature on immigrant entrepreneurs. But success felt hollow without anyone to share it with. I thought about calling my parents, telling them I'd made it, that I'd been right to follow my dream. But pride stopped me. They hadn't believed in me when it mattered. Why did they deserve to celebrate now? Then I received a message on Instagram. A DM from someone claiming to know something about Victoria's past, about deals she'd made to get where she was. "Be careful who you trust," the message read. "Victoria Kane isn't who you think she is." I spent a week digging into Victoria's background. Late nights Googling her name, reading old articles, tracking down photographers who'd worked with her before. What I found disturbed me. 5 years ago, she'd been involved in a lawsuit. A photographer accused her of stealing images, passing them off as her own in a gallery show. The case settled out of court, details sealed, but rumors persisted in the photography community. Some people claimed she was ruthless, willing to do anything to advance her career. Others defended her, saying the accusations were jealousy, attempts to tear down a successful woman. I didn't know what to believe. When I confronted Victoria, she didn't run from the conversation. "Yes, that happened," she said calmly. "And I've spent 5 years trying to make up for it. I was young and desperate, and I made a terrible choice. I hurt someone who trusted me." She explained that the photographer was her mentor, someone who'd taken her under his wing. When his work wasn't selling, she'd submitted some of his images under her name to a prestigious competition. She won. He found out. Everything exploded. "That's why I'm helping you," she said. "I'm trying to be the person I should have been. I'm trying to do right." Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. I wanted to believe Victoria's redemption story, wanted to think she'd genuinely changed. But doubt crept in during quiet moments. Was she using me like she'd used her mentor? Were my photographs just a means to her end? We argued constantly over the next month. About creative direction. About business decisions. About whose vision should guide the gallery. The partnership that had felt exciting now felt suffocating. I questioned everything. Her motives, my judgment, whether success was worth this constant uncertainty. One night, I showed up at the gallery unannounced. Victoria was there, alone, surrounded by prints from our latest exhibition. She was crying. "I know you don't trust me," she said when she saw me. "I don't blame you. But I need you to know something. You're the most talented photographer I've ever worked with. This partnership isn't about me redeeming myself. It's about making sure your voice gets heard. That's what matters." Her vulnerability surprised me. This wasn't the confident curator I'd been working with. This was someone scared and human, carrying her own regrets. "No more secrets," I said finally. "If we're going to make this work, I need complete honesty." Victoria agreed to my terms. She opened her books, showed me every contract and financial statement, proved that our partnership was legitimate. She introduced me to the photographer she'd hurt years ago, a man named Thomas Rivera, who confirmed that Victoria had spent years making amends, helping him get representation, promoting his work. "She made a mistake," Thomas told me over coffee. "But she's tried harder than anyone I know to fix it. That counts for something." With transparency came renewed trust. Victoria and I started collaborating more effectively, combining our strengths instead of competing. She handled business and connections. I focused on finding and developing new talent. The gallery began to thrive. But success brought new challenges. A major investor offered us funding to expand, to open a second location in Los Angeles. It was everything we talked about, the chance to become truly influential in the photography world. But the investor wanted control. Creative control. Final say over which artists we represented. Victoria was ready to accept. I wasn't sure. Then Mom called again. Dad was out of the hospital, but they'd lost the house. They were living in a one-bedroom apartment, both working retail jobs, struggling to make ends meet. "I'm not asking for money," Mom said. "I just wanted you to know. Your father finally understands. He sees what we took from you." I couldn't stop thinking about my parents. About Dad working as a cashier at 62, after spending 30 years as an accountant. About Mom folding clothes at Target, her law degree collecting dust. They'd built their lives on safety and stability, and it had all crumbled anyway. Maybe following your dreams wasn't the risky choice. Maybe the real risk was living someone else's vision of success. I visited them on a Sunday afternoon. Their apartment was tiny, clean but sparse, nothing like the home I'd grown up in. Dad looked older, thinner, his pride worn down by circumstance. "I was wrong about you," he said without preamble. "Wrong about what matters. I spent my whole life playing it safe, and where did it get me? You took the risk I was too scared to take, and you made it work." We talked for hours about fear and regret and the stories we tell ourselves about what's possible. For the first time, they asked real questions about my photography, about what I was trying to capture, why it mattered. They actually listened. Before I left, I made them an offer. "I can't give you money," I said, "but I have something better. A job. The gallery needs an accountant and someone to handle operations. If you're willing to work for your son." Victoria was skeptical about hiring my parents. "Are you sure that's wise?" she asked. "Mixing family and business rarely works." But I convinced her to give them a chance. Dad's accounting skills were exactly what we needed as the gallery grew. Mom's organizational abilities could help us manage the increasing administrative work. It wasn't charity. It was opportunity. They started the following Monday. Dad dove into our books, finding inefficiencies and tax advantages I'd never considered. Mom created systems for tracking inventory, communicating with artists, managing our schedule. They worked hard, determined to prove themselves, to show me they could support my dream even if it had taken them years to understand it. Meanwhile, Victoria pushed me to accept the investor's offer. The expansion to Los Angeles could transform us from a small Brooklyn gallery to a major player in contemporary photography. But the creative control issue bothered me. I'd fought too hard to maintain my artistic vision to compromise it now. "Sometimes you have to give up control to grow," Victoria argued. I disagreed. Growth wasn't worth losing what made us special. Then Victoria dropped a bombshell. The investor wasn't just anyone. He was her ex-husband, a wealthy art collector who'd supported her career early on. And he wasn't offering this deal to help us. He was offering it to win her back. The revelation about Victoria's ex-husband changed everything. His name was James Caldwell, a real estate developer who'd made millions building luxury condos. He'd funded Victoria's first gallery, then used that leverage to control her career. When she tried to leave him, he'd nearly destroyed her reputation in the art world. Now he was back, offering money and opportunity, but I could see the trap. "I won't let him control us," Victoria said. But her voice wavered. She was tempted. Not by James, but by what he represented. The chance to finally compete with the major galleries, to have real power and influence. I understood ambition, but not at the cost of autonomy. I spent a week thinking about what the gallery meant to me. Was it about success and recognition, or about creating space for authentic voices that wouldn't exist otherwise? I chose authenticity. I told Victoria I wanted to turn down James's offer, to grow slowly, on our terms. She agreed, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. The dream of Los Angeles, of expansion and influence, dying. Then my parents surprised me. Dad had been quietly approaching other investors, pitching our vision, showing them our numbers. He'd found someone. A non-profit focused on supporting arts organizations. They offered half what James had, but with no strings attached. The non-profit investor changed our trajectory. Instead of a splashy LA expansion, we focused on community partnerships, working with schools and community centers to bring photography education to neighborhoods that never got those opportunities. It was slower growth, less glamorous, but more meaningful. Victoria threw herself into the work with renewed energy. She'd been chasing conventional success for so long that she'd forgotten why she'd fallen in love with photography in the first place. This new direction reminded her. My parents thrived in their roles. Dad's financial planning kept us stable through the uncertain early months. Mom's organizational skills allowed us to manage multiple programs simultaneously. They'd found purpose again, and I'd found a way to give back what they'd taken from me, belief in a different path. But success brought attention we hadn't anticipated. A prominent critic wrote a glowing review of our work, calling us the future of documentary photography. Suddenly, major galleries wanted partnerships. Established photographers wanted representation. We went from struggling to stay open to turning away opportunities. It was overwhelming and exhilarating. Then I got a call from Thomas Rivera, the photographer Victoria had wronged. "I have information you need to know," he said. "About Victoria's past. About why James is really trying to get her back." Thomas met me at a coffee shop in the East Village, carrying a folder thick with documents. "I didn't want to show you this," he said, "but you deserve to know what you're involved in." The folder contained evidence of Victoria's past business practices. Not just the image theft I knew about, but a pattern of exploitation. Young photographers she'd promised to represent, then dropped when someone more marketable came along. Artists whose work she'd devalued to buy cheap, then sold for massive profits. "She's changed," Thomas said. "I believe that. But James knows all of this. He's holding it over her, threatening to expose everything unless she comes back to him." I felt sick. Was our entire partnership built on Victoria running from her past? Was I just another pawn in whatever game she and James were playing? I confronted Victoria that night. She didn't deny anything. "Everything Thomas showed you is true," she said. "I was ruthless and selfish, and I hurt people. That's exactly why I'm trying to do this differently now. Why I need this gallery to work. It's my chance to prove I'm not that person anymore." She explained that James had been manipulating her for months, using her past mistakes as leverage. "If you want me to leave the gallery, I will," she said. "You've earned that right." I spent 3 days deciding whether to continue my partnership with Victoria. Part of me wanted to cut ties, to protect myself and the gallery from her complicated past. But another part recognized something important. People change. Victoria had made terrible choices, but she was actively trying to be better. Wasn't that worth something? I called a meeting with Victoria, my parents, and our nonprofit investor. Everyone needed to know the truth. I laid out everything Thomas had told me, every past mistake Victoria had made. "If we're going to move forward together," I said, "it has to be with complete transparency." Victoria told her story without excuses. She'd been desperate and ambitious and willing to hurt others to succeed. Now she was trying to build something different, something ethical, but her past was always there, threatening to destroy what she'd created. My father surprised me by speaking up. "I understand making choices you regret," he said, looking at me. "Choices that hurt the people you love. What matters is what you do after. Victoria's been trying to make it right. That counts for something." We decided to keep the partnership, but with new terms. Victoria would focus on business operations while I maintained full creative control. Complete financial transparency. And if James tried to interfere again, we'd face it together. Armed with renewed commitment and a solid plan, we pushed forward. James continued calling, offering larger deals, making threats, but Victoria held firm. Together, we'd built something that mattered more than money or prestige. Our community photography programs expanded to 6 neighborhoods. Students from those programs started getting scholarships to art schools. One 15-year-old from the Bronx won a national photography competition, her image of her grandmother displayed in the Smithsonian. This was success that couldn't be measured in sales or reviews. But James wasn't done. He launched a smear campaign, spreading rumors about Victoria's past, contacting our investors, trying to undermine everything we'd built. Articles appeared in art blogs questioning our business practices, our funding sources, the authenticity of our mission. It was a coordinated attack designed to destroy us. Our nonprofit investor got nervous. They scheduled a meeting to discuss pulling their funding. Without that support, we'd have to close the community programs, maybe even the gallery itself. Everything we'd worked for hung in the balance. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the students in our programs, about the artists we'd helped launch, about what would happen if this all disappeared. The morning of the investor meeting, something unexpected happened. The 15-year-old whose photograph had gone to the Smithsonian organized a protest. 30 students from our programs showed up at the gallery with signs and cameras, ready to fight for the space that had changed their lives. They'd contacted local news stations, posted on social media, created a hashtag that started trending in New York. By noon, we had supporters we'd never met defending us online, sharing their stories about how our programs had impacted them. The investors saw all of it. They watched teenagers passionately explaining what photography had given them, how our gallery had opened doors they didn't know existed. They read testimonials from parents and teachers. They saw the community we'd built. When we sat down for the meeting, the lead investor smiled. "We're not pulling funding," she said. "We're doubling it. This is exactly the kind of impact we want to support." But there was one condition. We had to address Victoria's past publicly, acknowledge the mistakes, show how we'd learned from them. No more hiding. Complete transparency. Victoria agreed. That week, we published a long statement on our website. Victoria detailed every mistake she'd made, every person she'd hurt, and exactly what she'd done to make amends. She owned her past without excuses. The response surprised us. Yes, some people criticized her, but more people appreciated the honesty. With James's attack defeated and our funding secure, we received an offer that would have been impossible to imagine a year earlier. The International Photography Foundation wanted to partner with us for a global exhibition. Photographers from our programs would show their work in galleries across 6 countries. It was recognition on a scale I'd never dreamed possible. But the offer came with complications. The exhibition would require 6 months of intense work, travel to multiple countries, and significant time away from the gallery and community programs. I'd also have to photograph key pieces for the show, returning to the streets to capture images that would represent our vision. It meant stepping back from day-to-day operations, trusting others to maintain what we'd built. Victoria encouraged me to accept. "This is your moment," she said. "Everything we've built has been preparing you for this." My parents agreed. They'd been running operations smoothly for months. The gallery was stable, our programs thriving. I didn't need to control everything anymore. The hardest part was deciding what story to tell through my photographs. The foundation wanted images that captured transformation, that showed how art changes lives and communities. I thought about my own journey, about how photography had saved me when I lost everything, about the unexpected ways kindness and opportunity had appeared. I accepted the global exhibition offer, but on my terms. I'd photograph stories from our community programs, showing the world what was possible when you invested in authentic voices. I spent 3 months documenting students and families, capturing moments of discovery and growth. One image became the centerpiece of the exhibition, the 15-year-old from the Bronx teaching her grandmother to use a camera, both of them laughing, connected through creativity across generations. It represented everything our gallery stood for. The exhibition opened in New York before traveling internationally. The gallery was packed with artists, collectors, critics, and most importantly, the students and families whose stories filled the walls. I stood in the corner, watching people engage with the images, seeing them moved by stories of resilience and hope. Then I saw my parents. They'd been standing in front of a photograph for 10 minutes, tears streaming down both their faces. It was an image I'd taken without them knowing. Dad teaching a student about financial planning, both bent over a spreadsheet, working together. The caption read, "Redemption comes in unexpected forms." Mom found me in the crowd. "We're so proud of you," she said. "Not just for this, but for teaching us what courage really means. You changed our lives by following your dream." The global exhibition was a massive success, traveling to 23 cities and reaching millions of people. Photographers from our programs launched their own careers. The gallery expanded its community partnerships. Victoria and I became recognized leaders in documentary photography, frequently invited to speak about ethical practices in the art world. But the real transformation wasn't professional. It was personal. My parents and I had rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect instead of expectations. They'd learned that safety isn't the same as security, that taking risks for something you believe in matters more than following someone else's path. Victoria had proven that past mistakes don't define you if you're willing to do the work of becoming better. And I'd learned that success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about staying true to your vision even when everyone doubts you, and about extending grace to others when they finally understand. Last month, I received an invitation to speak at Columbia Law School about alternative careers after law school. Standing in front of students who felt trapped by expectations, I told them my story. About losing everything to follow my dream. About the unexpected allies who appeared when I needed them most. About how the worst thing that happened to me led to the best life I could imagine. After the talk, a student approached me. She was considering dropping out to pursue music. Her parents were furious. She didn't know what to do. I gave her my card and said, "Follow your heart. The path won't be easy, but it will be yours. And sometimes that's all that matters."